Welcome to Map Your Mind. Travel through the world with your brain. Today, we journey into the heart of Eastern Europe, a land blanketed by forest and lakes. A place where time feels suspended in quiet villages and Soviet-era cityscapes. This is Belarus, mysterious, resilient, and deeply tied to the shifting winds of European history. Belarus is a landlocked country, bordered by Russia to the east, Ukraine to the south, Poland to the west, and Lithuania and Latvia to the north. It's often overlooked on the world map, but that's a mistake, because Belarus holds stories of empires, occupation, endurance, and survival. The name Belarus means White Rus, a name that dates back centuries, possibly tied to the old Eastern Slavic lands. To understand Belarus, we have to go way back, before nations, before borders, back when East Slavic tribes settled across the forested plains, living off the land, building wooden fortresses, and crafting the roots of a language and culture that still thrives today. By the 9th century, the region was part of the early Kievan Rus, the first major East Slavic state. This was a time of trade routes along the Dnieper River, Orthodox Christianity spreading, and princes vying for power. But Kievan Rus didn't last forever. When it fractured, Belarusian lands became part of a rising power, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Under Lithuanian rule, the region thrived. By the 14th and 15th centuries, Belarusian cities like Polotsk and Novorudsk were bustling centers of trade and scholarship. The people had their own legal code, the Statute of the Grand Duchy, one of the earliest written legal systems in Europe. Belarusian became the language of state administration. It was a rare time when the people of these lands held pride in their unique voice. Then came the next great shift. In 1569, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was born. It was a union of two powers, and Belarusian territory was swept into a new chapter. Polonization began, with Polish culture, language, and Catholicism gaining dominance. The Orthodox Belarusians faced suppression, and over time, many cultural markers began to fade. But it was the 18th century that brought perhaps the most dramatic transformation. The partitions of Poland dismantled the Commonwealth, and by the end of the 1700s, Belarus had been absorbed by the Russian Empire. The Tsars ruled with a firm grip. Russian became the official language. The Orthodox Church replaced Catholic institutions, and rebellions like the November Uprising and January Uprising were met with brutal crackdowns. Still, the Belarusian identity refused to vanish. In the late 19th century, a national revival emerged. Writers, intellectuals, and farmers began to preserve the Belarusian language, folk tales, and music. The press and poetry became weapons of cultural survival. Then came the 20th century, a time of storms. World War I rolled across the land, and then, in 1917, the Russian Revolution turned the world upside down. Belarus found itself caught between two forces, Bolshevik Russia and the newly reborn Poland. After years of chaos and warfare, the Treaty of Riga in 1921 split Belarus in two. The western part went to Poland, and the eastern half became the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic. But peace was fleeting. World War II would bring unimaginable horror. Nazi Germany invaded in 1941, unleashing devastation. Entire villages were burned. Over 2 million Belarusians, about a quarter of the population, perished during the war. The Jewish population, once vibrant in cities like Minsk and Brest, was nearly wiped out. The partisan movement in Belarus was one of the strongest in all of Europe, with locals fighting back against the occupiers from deep within the forest. When the war ended, Belarus was in ruins, but it became a founding member of the United Nations, a rare honor for a Soviet republic. Under the USSR, Belarus was rapidly industrialized. Cities were rebuilt in gray concrete blocks. Tractors and textile factories hummed. Soviet ideology shaped education, architecture, and culture. But beneath the surface, the Belarusian identity was subdued. Its language and traditions slowly pushed to the margins. Then came 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed, and Belarus was finally officially independent. It was a new era, filled with hope and uncertainty. In 1994, Alexander Lukashenko was elected president, and he has remained in power ever since, making him the longest-serving leader in Europe. Lukashenko maintained close ties with Russia, kept much of the Soviet structure intact, and controlled the economy and media. Belarus has been called Europe's last dictatorship, a nation where opposition is silenced, and elections are contested. But beneath the politics, the Belarusian people continue to define their country in other ways. They gather in forest for Kapala night, celebrating ancient Slavic rituals. They pass down embroidered folk patterns, songs, and tales. The Belarusian language, though spoken less publicly, is cherished in poems and homes. And artists, activists, and youth have used the internet to reawaken pride in their heritage. In 2020, The world watched as protests erupted across Belarus after disputed presidential elections. Hundreds of thousands of people marched peacefully for change. Their chants echoed in Minsk squares and across the countryside. They carried the white-red-white flag, once banned, now reclaimed as a symbol of unity and freedom. Though the regime cracked down hard, the spirit of protest marked a turning point. A generation of Belarusians began to see themselves not as pawns of history, but as authors of their future. Fun fact: Belarus is home to one of Europe's last remaining primeval forests, the Biały Eco Forest, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that spans the border with Poland and shelters the rare European bison. So the next time you hear Belarus, don't think of it as just another post-Soviet country. Think of it as a land of survival, a place where empire after empire tried to erase its voice. But still, the forests whisper, the rivers carry old songs, and the people, quiet, strong, and enduring, keep writing their story. Where will your mind travel next?